What is going on, everybody, and welcome back today, guys, to the channel. And as you can tell by the title of this video, today we're gonna be sitting down. This is really a reflection, I'd say. We're taking a look back at everything that happened, everything that occurred in NXT season 2. The main focal point of this is to really sit back, shed some light on the thought process of some of the choices that I made, some of the decisions that were changed, and really how after TakeOver Brooklyn, I had no idea what I wanted to do. But we're going to shed some light on that. But before we get into the video, make sure you guys hit that like button for me. If you guys are not already subscribed, subscribe to the channel. We have more pro wrestling content that will be coming up here on the channel in the near future, and we would love to have you around for it. Now we're going to jump right into the thick of things. The first thing that I want to talk about is the first pay-per-view that we actually did, which was NXT Redemption. Now, the thought process for that, it was actually very simple for me, because if you cast your mind back to the first pay-per-view of the first season, that was NXT Arrival, and which I'll also be making sort of a reflection on season 1, seeing as how I didn't do one for that. I'll be doing one for that probably right after this one. I have to sit and see how my schedule plays out. But the first pay-per-view of the first season was NXT Arrival, and I chose that, not to try and be similar to the real NXT, because, I don't want to be similar to the real NXT. My NXT is, my own taste, it's my own flavor. It's very unique, I believe it is. Everything from the lighting to the overall presentation to the roster that I've put together. I feel it's really unique, and I hope you guys feel that it's very unique too. But the first pay-per-view, it wasn't because the first special on the network way back when was NXT Arrival. No. I chose NXT Arrival because it was a fitting name. NXT Arrival. It was our arrival. It was our first pay-per-view, and it was us showing what we can do. Me showing what I could do. Bringing what I had. How do I want to say? What I had put together, if that makes sense, up at that point, everything that I had, all the skills that I had, all of that coming together to form that first pay-per-view. Because I haven't been doing this very long at all. This whole universe, the whole editing thing, all that, I just started this a year ago. Like right before I started NXT is when I started getting into editing and things like that, which is why, even in some of the videos that I do now, I'm gonna make mistakes. I'm gonna fuck up. That's gonna happen. That's inevitable. Because I'm still relatively new to the game. It's bound to happen, especially in the early stages, until you know exactly it is what you're doing and what it is you want your channel and your content to be. So that's in terms of the editing. I sat down and I was like, what do I want the first pay-per-view to be? And that's how we came up with NXT Arrival. So when I sat down for the second season, it was a no-brainer for me. I immediately knew, just like that, what I wanted the first pay-per-view to be. If the first pay-per-view of the first season was going to be NXT Arrival and be about us arriving as a brand, as a universe mode, then the first pay-per-view of the second season would have to be redemption. It'd have to be our redemption, us coming back. So that's really the thought that I had going into the first pay-per-view for the second season. And as I mentioned before, I will touch base on season 1. It'll be in a video very similar to this in the near future, or where I'll sit down, I'll talk about everything, the thought process, all of that, everything that happened with NXT season 1. Now, next on the list, we want to talk about not using all of the talent from season 1 in season 2. Now, if you guys have stuck around from season 1 and watched season 2, then you'll notice that I didn't use all of the wrestlers that was in season 1. I didn't use AJ Styles, I didn't use Pete Dunne, I didn't use Drew McIntyre, didn't use Tommaso Ciampa, didn't use Samoa Joe, etc. And I did that for a reason. And that reason being was I don't really like to reuse a lot of the same talent over and over again. I like to switch them out. And in a way, I kind of wrote all the guys off. AJ Styles, he had that brief picture, that we showed on the one NXT episode with Ambrose, where he was talking about, one triple power bomb from the Shield, and it sent AJ Styles packing to New Japan. So that's how, I like to write some people off. And even in season 2, Austin Aries, we haven't seen him since TakeOver Orlando, where he had that one final match with Cesaro. And it's, I don't just write people off just to write people off. They're just not on TV just for the sake of not being on TV. As I mentioned, AJ Styles went to New Japan. I remember I was having a conversation with Third Strike, and he brought up about how I was using Austin Aries and how I wasn't using him anymore. After TakeOver Orlando, I like to have some sort of semblance of realism. So I remember I told him that Austin Aries went to Impact Wrestling. So, it's, small things like that I like to do, just because you may not be seeing someone on TV or on NXT, it doesn't mean that, I'm just not using them. Well, yes, I'm not using them, but, I sent them away, or they went somewhere else. It's just small things like that. That's just like how I like to do things. And as I mentioned before, Pete Dunne, Drew McIntyre, Tommaso Ciampa, I didn't use all of them for specific reasons, which I'm not gonna spoil. But I did utilize them for the first season, and while they were good in the first season, they were pillars of the NXT brand. They had a lot of great matches in the first season, but when I sat down and knew for a fact that I was gonna be doing a second season of NXT, and I wrote out the script, which is something else that I'll touch base on here in a little bit. When I sat down and wrote out the script for the second season, it just didn't allow me. I thought everything out down to a T. And yes, I could have utilized them in some places, but for me to accomplish what I wanted to accomplish, I just had no room for them. And as I mentioned before, I could have brought them in. I could have brought them in at any point in time, but I had bigger plans, and I still have bigger plans for them, which is why I didn't use anybody just for the sake of not using anybody. You know, everybody will be coming back eventually, so there's nothing to worry about in that aspect. You know, you will see AJ Styles, you will see Pete Dunne, Drew McIntyre, Tommaso Ciampa, Samoa Joe. You'll see all of them again at some point in time. When? I don't know. I really don't know, but you will see them again. And even going into the third season, you know, I'm not going to utilize everybody from the second season. And it's not just because, you know, I may or may not have something for them lined up. It's simply due to the fact I want to interchange talent, you know, give other people the chance to show what they can do, you know. It keeps the content fresh. It keeps the brand. It keeps the wrestling fresh, the matchups fresh. And which I remember, I believe I was listening to the Talk is Jericho podcast a while ago, and Jericho said that to build a company, you know, you have your 6 or your 7 specific wrestlers that you need, in which I believe in season 2, you know, we had those 6 or 7 wrestlers, because a lot of season 2 revolved around who? You know, Kevin Owens, Aleister Black, Dean Ambrose, you know, Austin Aries, Cesaro, all these names, and even Ricochet coming in. You know, he came in midway through the season. He came in at Money in the Bank and became the North American champion. And even though he came in halfway through the season, he still immediately, at least I believe, you know, he immediately came in and just felt like a big deal. Because up until that point, I didn't really have any of the big top tier names. You know, like yeah, I had Aleister Black and some other people from the first season, but I didn't have that big name. You know, that big personality from the first season. In which when Ricochet came in and he won the North American Championship from then champion Kevin Owens, it was it was something. You know, I'll touch base on that here in a little bit, but that Fatal 4-Way was originally completely different. But when I brought in Ricochet, it was the return of a familiar face for, you know, those who had actually watched season 1 of NXT. And me personally, I have to say, while I did put a lot of time and effort into the first season of NXT, I don't really like it that much. You know, it sounds weird. It sounds weird, I know, but I don't know. I know that was like those were my first couple of videos, and even season 2. You know, they're still my first couple of videos. You know, my first handful of videos. You know, season 2 just improved so much on everything from season 1, and you know, a lot of that has to do with 2K adding the highlight reel into the menu, the pause menu, because if you guys remember back in 2K18, you had to find the clip that you wanted, and you couldn't edit it or anything from the pause menu. You just had to find the clip. You had to save the clip. Then you'd have, whenever you finish the match, then you'd have to go to the highlight reel in the main menu, and you have to go from there. It was just a whole process. So that's why I didn't utilize the highlight reel in 2K18 because not only was I new to the whole thing, and didn't really know what the hell I was doing. Um, I didn't utilize it because it was just a whole process, and when you're new to it, you you don't really know what it is you're doing, and when you don't know what it is you're doing, and you don't get the results that you want, or the whole process to get what you do want is complicated. You sit back and you're just like, man, this is a bummer. And that was the mindset with season one. Pretty much throughout the entirety of season one. That's why I didn't utilize the highlight reel. It's not because I didn't want to, but more along the lines of I didn't really know how I would utilize it. I didn't know how to utilize it per se. And because the whole process of finding the specific camera angles that you want is to me, like, I just wanted to get the content out. I just wanted to bring viewers in, get people to watch my stuff. And I busted my ass for a long time to get where I wanted that first season to be, because there were a whole lot of matches that I re-recorded, and even some pay-per-views that got cut. But again, I will touch base on that in the near future. I'm getting off topic. I could go on for quite a while. Now, the script for the second season, as I mentioned before, only went up to TakeOver Brooklyn. And it wasn't because, I just got to TakeOver Brooklyn. It was just like, okay, fuck it, I'm done. That's not what happened at all. That break that we took from in between, from season 1 to season 2, which was about a 2-month break. It was from, I want to say, late October to around sometime in December. That time, I utilized that time to write out the script, and that's what I do in between the breaks, in between seasons. I'm not just sitting on my ass and not doing anything. From season 1 to season 2, that break that we took, that was the time that I utilized to write the scripts, and that's how I do it. That time I use to write the script, even now. And in between the break from season 2 to season 3, I'm taking that time to write out the script for season 3. Now, the script for season 2, I sat down and I had everything worked out. I had it written down to a T. I knew exactly what I wanted to do. But as time progressed, and the more I sat and the more I looked at the script, I sat and I was like, maybe let's not do this. Maybe let's not do that. Maybe we should change this. And that really, that's really what took up the time from October to December. No kidding. I changed the script a lot. So the script or the matches and how everything played out that you guys saw is not what I originally had written down. And that's what I've said before. I write out the scripts, but they tend to change sometimes. So after about, hell, I don't even know, about 3, maybe 4 rewrites, because I take my time writing the script. It's not just something that I sit out and write out in one day. You know, I take days, weeks even, to write out the script, because what I'll do, I'll sit and just watch a ton of pro wrestling. And if you guys don't know that about me, I watch so much pro wrestling, it is absolutely ridiculous. And I'm not even kidding. And I'll talk about that in another video if you guys want. I'll sit and I'll watch a whole lot of pro wrestling from every continent, from every era, from all these different from promotions. You know, I'll watch 90s All Japan matches. I'll watch Stardom matches. I'll watch WCW, ECW, WWF, Impact, anything that you can think of. I will sit there, I'll watch, and I'll just absorb it. And recently, I've been watching a whole lot of WCW. So I'll sit, I'll watch a ton of wrestling, and while I'm sitting, I'm like, that might be a cool thing to do, and I'll write it down. And when I write it down, I'll think of ways like, okay, how can I implement this into NXT, and who would fit the bill of doing what I want them to do in this storyline. And that's really the process that goes through making NXT. So that's a little thought, a little bit of behind the scenes of how I come up with the script for NXT. Now, as I mentioned before, the script only went up to TakeOver Brooklyn, and that was because I started it, I sat down, I was writing it, and I was like, this is actually pretty good. And the script that I wrote down, which you guys saw in NXT, that was the final build. I was like, okay, I'm done. This is what I'm going to be doing. Now, I don't even remember why I stopped writing the script, but I remember thinking that, okay, I've got some time before I get TakeOver Brooklyn, because TakeOver Brooklyn took a while, and although it took a while, it was well worth it, because that show, oh my gosh, that show was something else. I don't know what it is. It's we only gone to New York twice, and that being Brooklyn and the final pay-per-view, which was TakeOver New York. But it's like every time we go to New York, we just, I don't know, it's something about it. We have these absolute banger matches, and they come out so perfectly. And other than a few hiccups here and there, TakeOver Brooklyn and TakeOver New York are damn near perfect shows that I have put together. And it's good to see that, people agree with me, because TakeOver Brooklyn is the most watched video on the channel. I've said it before, and I'll happily say it again. It's the most watched video on the channel, and it's like every time I say, oh, the numbers are done, I go back and I look at the numbers again, and it's like 20 more people have watched the show, and it's absolutely crazy to think about. I can't thank you all enough for that. And it's the same thing with TakeOver New York. It's like every time I say, okay, I think we've peaked with this show, we end up getting like 10, 15 more views. And it's crazy to think that not only is TakeOver Brooklyn the most watched video on the channel, with I believe it had 960 something views, TakeOver New York is the second most watched video on the channel. And I don't know, it's something special about New York. I don't know, it's that's our place. I'd have to say. the Barclays Center, Madison Square Garden. I don't know. I don't know what it is, but it's every time we go to New York. The numbers on the videos do absolutely insane. And I don't know, it's just I hold that special because you know, it's I don't even know how to put it into words. Uh, Takeover Brooklyn it was a pain. It was definitely a pain to put together. There's no hiding that. It was a pain in the ass to put together. But when I sat and I did the commentary for the show, you know, of course we had some hiccups here and there. That's to be expected. Hopefully we can do better in the future. We get better equipment and things like that, so that way I can bring better content for you guys. When I sat and I did the commentary for the shows, because what I do is I'll make sure the show is fully edited together. You know, I'll get the clips, cut them all together, put the camera angles where they need to be, promos, whatever. You know, I'll make sure the show is 110% completed. And then when I know for a fact that it's fully edited, it's fully done, and all I have to do is the commentary, I'll sit down and I'll do the commentary. Now, when I sat and I did the commentary for TakeOver Brooklyn, I don't know, it's almost hard to describe. Like, I got caught up in the moment, and the same thing can be said for TakeOver New York, in which, you know, for me, you know, our last pay-per-view of the season, I guess you could say it's like our WrestleMania. You know, you gotta bring it. You know, lay all your chips out on the table. You know, give it everything you got. Bring it all to the table. You know, leave nothing out of the conversation. Bring it all on. You know, so I don't know. I got caught up in the moment, and you can tell it's like it's hard for me to put it into words, because NXT is something I hold near and dear to my heart. You know, that's my brand. You know, that's my company. You know, I built that up so far, and I've done it with the help of all of you, and the fact that you guys enjoyed it. And when I said that if you guys want an NXT return, you know, you have to get those numbers up on TakeOver New York, you guys got those fucking numbers up. Just to see that you guys love NXT as much as I do, yes, it's almost hard to put it into words, because, you know, this is just something that I love doing. This is just, I don't know. It's hard for me to put into words. NXT is me, you know. It's my identity. You know, like, yeah, I'm the voice of NXT, but because of all of you, NXT is coming back. Because you all wanted it. You all wanted to see it. You know, I said before that I was content with ending the series where it was, because I felt that we went out with a big enough bang at the end of season 2. And, you know, regardless of subscriber numbers, you know, I've been told I'm underrated before, and while I do appreciate that, you know, it's still weird for me to be told that I'm underrated, because, you know, I'm still a relative newcomer. You know, I've only been doing this editing game, this whole content creativity thing for a year, and it's, I don't know. It's however many of you there are, however many of you listen to this, it's because of you all. NXT is coming back. Because season 2, I had so much fun with season 2. Yes, of course it was a pain in the ass to put together, especially in some parts. But when I sit and I really think about it, I had fun with it, Not playing the game, not playing 2K, because I had fun making NXT. And it's, I don't even know how to really put it in words, to be completely honest. But I'm getting off topic. This I could go on for a long time, I'm telling you. When I got to TakeOver Brooklyn, and we did the show, when it was one and done, when it was complete, I sat and I was like, oh shit, I have not finished writing out the script yet. So I mentioned it before. Everything you guys saw after TakeOver Brooklyn was me winging it, because while I did say that I was going to go back and finish the script for season 2, it's like every time I would sit down to start writing out the script, I would have to do something else, whether it's something for the channel, something in real life, whether it's work, anything like that. Something just always got in the way and prevented me from finishing the script for the second season. In which, when I sat and I was like, what am I gonna do? I didn't know what I was gonna do. I knew that, I knew the pay-per-views, because that's something else that I do. I knew what the pay-per-views were. Everything, all the pay-per-views, all that. I knew what the next pay-per-view was gonna be. So after TakeOver Brooklyn, I knew it was gonna be Money in the Bank. I knew it was gonna be TakeOver Phoenix, and I knew we were gonna close out the season with TakeOver New York. I knew that's what we were gonna do. But in between, yeah, you have the pay-per-views, but how are we gonna get there? And that's what I needed to do. That's what I needed to sit out and think about. And because I couldn't do that, a lot of the times when I would sit down and start recording for NXT, I was like, what are we gonna do this week? How can we expand upon what happened last week or the week prior? So that's really how we finished out the season. The second half of that season was me winging it, because I didn't have a script. So I was just thinking on the fly, week to week. I was like, what are we gonna do? I didn't know what I wanted to do, so I was like, okay, what happened last week? We need to improve upon that, or shed some more light on there. What happened 2 weeks ago, whenever or whatever happened. Then we need to shed some more light on that and go from there. The decision to put the championship on Shayna Baszler was relatively a tricky one. And I say that because, similar to how I write out the scripts for the season, and I know what pay-per-views and everything I'll be doing, I have every champion written down that I will ever have. I have every NXT champion that there will be. I have every North American champion there will ever be. Every tag team champion and every women's champion that there will ever be. They are all written down And it's like, okay, I have my champions. I know who's going to win the championship. I just don't know where they're going to win the championship or when they're going to win the championship. So, like, yes, I have, point A to point B, but that destination in between, it's like, okay, you have your point A and you have your point B. How are you going to get there? And that played a big factor into Shayna Baszler winning the NXT Women's Championship. And I say that because I knew that we were going to have our first women's champion crowned at TakeOver Brooklyn. That was etched in stone. I knew that for a fact that was going to happen. The ladder match was something that I thought of later on down the line. And Becky Lynch, the other woman that was in that match, I also knew that I wanted to have her in the match, so I always knew that the match was going to be Shayna Baszler versus Becky Lynch to crown the first NXT Women's Champion. I knew from the get-go, from the moment I sat down and said, okay, it's time to bring in a women's division, I knew for a fact that was going to be the headlining match. But to make it a ladder match was something that I had thought about, I'd say, about a week or two, probably 3 weeks later, after I already had the match written down. And I chose a ladder match because, I take certain aspects from the real NXT. I like to pay homage, which is why, you've heard like the older NXT theme song playing before, or the reason why I don't really do gimmick matches like that. I like to keep it straightforward. So, I keep that aspect of NXT, and I keep those specialty matches rare. So that way, when they do come up, they feel like a big deal. And to crown the first women's champion, that was a big deal, because not only was it the first time, we were crowning our first women's champion, it was the first time that the women's division would be main eventing a pay-per-view. And from the moment I had that match in my head, I knew for a fact that was going to close the show. Now, not only was it to crown the first ever women's champion, not only was it the first time that the women would be closing the show, it was also our first ladder match. So we pulled the trifecta, I guess you could say, because I've always been a believer that your heavyweight championship should always close the show. For example, the WWE Championship, in my opinion, should always close the show. Not the Universal Championship, the WWE Championship. And I say that because while, yes, they are both, world championships, the Universal Championship does not have the prestige, and it does not have the lineage that the WWE Championship has. The greats from bygone eras have all held the WWE Championship, well over 50 years worth of championship reigns. That is the most prestigious prize in the WWE. It's not the most prestigious prize in professional wrestling, but it is the most prestigious prize in the WWE. And since that is the most prestigious prize, that should be the top prize that everybody on the roster is gunning for. You can gun for the Universal Championship, but your main goal, your ultimate goal, should be the WWE Championship, because that's the legacy, that's the championship that all the big names have held. John Cena, The Undertaker, Triple H, Randy Orton, Ric Flair, Chris Benoit, everybody, all these big names have held the WWE Championship. And while, yes, the Universal Championship, again, is a world championship, it just does not have the prestige, nor does it have the legacy that the WWE Championship has. And I take that aspect into NXT. That's why the NXT Championship always closes out the show. Always. There's only been 2 times that the NXT Championship has never closed a show. The first time, it was back in the first season when we had that unsanctioned match with Ethan Carter III and Pete Dunne. But I chose to do that afterwards because it's unsanctioned, so it didn't technically count. So even technically still, the NXT Championship did close out the show. But when it came time for TakeOver Brooklyn, I knew for a fact that to crown the first women's champion, that would close the show. And there are those rare occasions where, you can exempt the championship or any other championship from, closing the show, from the WWE Championship or any heavyweight championship not closing the show. There are some exemptions, but 99% of the time, your heavyweight championship should close the show. Now, that was the exemption for us. I wanted it to be a big deal. So in order for it to be a big deal, as if it wasn't already a big enough deal in of itself, crowning the first ever women's champion, that's a big deal in and of itself. But to have it be the first ever ladder match in NXT, and to also have them close the show, that was something spectacular. It's something I knew from the get-go that I wanted to do. And in that match, we had a debut. The other 3 members of the Horsewomen. And if you all noticed, I don't call them the 4 Horsewomen because, well, you can count. You can count. You don't need them to be called the 4 Horsewomen. It's the Horsewomen works. So the debut of the Horsewomen actually came at the last second. And when I say the last second, I mean it happened right before I actually started recording the women's championship match. I sat and I thought, because I knew from the get-go when I started the women's division that I wanted to have all 4 members of the Horsewomen. I just didn't know at what point in time I would want to introduce them, because we already had Shayna Baszler. We just didn't have Ronda Rousey, Jessamyn Duke, and Marina Shafir. And while I was sitting and while I was playing the match out, it actually popped in my head. And I was like, now would be a perfect time for the Horsewomen to debut and help Shayna Baszler win the women's championship. That is literally how that played out. So I had to think, how could I get the Horsewomen? How could I incorporate them into the match? And it was really tricky. It took a couple of matches, a lot of camera works, but ultimately, when I sat and I watched it and I saw how it played out, I was actually very, very satisfied with it. I didn't really use the Horsewomen that much in the course of the second season, but I did that for a reason, which I'm not going to go into too much detail about it. But it may be a while before you see all the other women of the Horsewomen, because I'm not entirely sure if Ronda Rousey will be in 2K20. So if she's not, then we'll have to wait for the creators to create a good looking created wrestler, and same for Jessamine Duke and Marina Shafir. But only time will tell. So we'll see how that will play out. Now, the decision to put the championship on Shayna Baszler was, again, one that I knew from the get-go. I knew that she was going to be the first women's champion. And, again, it has nothing to do with real-life NXT. It has nothing to do with the fact that Shayna Baszler is actually the NXT women's champion. Nothing to do with that. I made the decision to put the NXT Women's Championship on Shayna Baszler because I believe that she is one of the best women's champions that I have seen in NXT, because she's a hell of a tremendous athlete. Like, there's no doubt about that. Any rumor before that you may have heard, or anytime you ever heard someone say, oh, they're from the MMA world, there's no way they'll be able to make it in the pro wrestling game. People like Matt Riddle and Shayna Baszler, they have proven those people wrong. They've proven that you can go from mixed martial arts to wrestling and be successful. And Shayna Baszler, she's one of my favorite women that have held the NXT Women's Championship. And it's because she's had some good matches. There's no doubt about that. So it's like whenever she wins and retains the title, I'm perfectly okay with that. Like Shayna Baszler being the women's champion, it doesn't bother me at all. I know some people are tired of seeing her with the belt, but me personally, I don't mind it because she is a tremendous NXT Women's Champion. And when I sat and I thought, who do I want to be the very first NXT Women's Champion, Shayna Baszler was one of the ones that immediately came to mind. Becky Lynch was a close second away, but ultimately in the end, I went with Shayna Baszler, and I decided to have the Horsewomen come in and assist her in winning the strap in the ladder match at TakeOver Brooklyn. The decision to put the championship on Dean Ambrose was one I knew that I wanted to do early on. I knew that I wanted to put the championship on Dean Ambrose in the second season, but I didn't know when and where I wanted to do it. And the same can be said with Roman Reigns and Seth Rollins with the tag team titles. Now, when I originally introduced the tag division, I knew that the Shield would be the first ever tag team champions, but I didn't know who they would face, and I didn't know where the match would take place. So when I finally sat and I decided, okay, I want to do a tag team tournament, and I want to have the match culminate at TakeOver, but I didn't know which TakeOver I wanted it to be. And ultimately, I settled for TakeOver Orlando because we have so much history in Orlando. We crowned the first NXT champion there, our first North American champion there. And so I knew that I wanted to have the Shield win the tag team titles. And it's funny enough that the only championship that we didn't have an inaugural winner in Orlando was with Shayna Baszler and the Women's Championship, which that took place in Brooklyn. So ultimately, I knew that the Shield would win, but I didn't know who they would be facing. So I took a bunch of tag teams, and I was like, okay, who do I want the Shield to face at TakeOver Orlando for the tag team titles? And ultimately, I settled down for the War Raiders, which, fun little fact here, I didn't want to actually call them the the War Raiders, I wanted to call them War Machine, just because that's simply the name that I've known them by for the longest time. I thought it was a little weird when they came to the WWE and they was like, okay, we're the War Raiders, and I was just like, ew, what's wrong with War Machine? And I think ROH actually owns that name. I'm not 100% sure about that, but War Raiders was something I could eventually settle upon, because it was similar to their old name. All they did was just change the secondary name. So I'm like, okay, that's fine with me. And I was gonna change their name to the War Machine, but I didn't really want to have any weird looking graphics. Like, I don't like to change the graphics too much. Like, I'll change it if I need to, but to change it just to simply fit the second half of their name, I didn't feel that was enough. Like, it warranted enough to change everything. So ultimately, I left it at that. So I knew that the Shield would be facing War Raiders at TakeOver Orlando. Now, the match itself could have went a little bit better, but that can be said for a lot of the tag matches that I've done, because I can tell you right here and now, I hate tag team matches. I cannot get a feel for them to save my life. And usually when I end up recording them, it takes me, God knows how many times before I get something that I can ultimately settle upon. I don't even know how many times I sit and record. It's weird. I don't know. I can never get a feel for it. And, some universe mode content creators, they can relate. Like, you have some one-on-one matches, and it's just the match just goes together so well. It's like the two people that you pick, they just work, and you have an absolute fantastic match. And sometimes you can get an absolute banger of a match on the first go, and that's happened to me. Some of the Dean Ambrose and Aleister Black matches only took me like 2 takes, and that's it. It's just something about it. They just go together. And it's like that chemistry, I can never tap into that chemistry when I'm doing a tag team match. And it leads me to recording a tag team match like 4, 5, 6 times. And I don't know. I hate tag team matches. So the tag match definitely could have went a lot better. I did like how the match ended, with Seth Rollins doing the Phoenix Splash, which the Phoenix Splash is a lot of the moves that I do in specific, are protected. The Black Mass is definitely one of the most protective finishers. Dean Ambrose and AJ Styles are the only 2 people that have ever kicked out of the Black Mass. That's how protected I like to keep it. And Seth Rollins has only utilized the Phoenix Splash, I want to say once, maybe twice. Like, I like to protect my finisher. I like to keep them protected. Like, none of that do the finisher and then they kick out and then you have to do the finisher like 2 more times. We don't do that. I actually did do that once in the first season, and it was like in the early going. It was like the first episode, I believe, that happened. It was EC3 versus Samoa Joe, and EC3 did the 1%er like 3 times. Yeah, I don't really like to overdo it too much. I much rather have it, the opponent evade the finisher throughout the entirety of the match, and then they get hit with it once, and then it's over. And that's why it's called the finisher, because it can end the match at a moment's notice. So Rollins did the Phoenix Splash. I liked how the match turned out. And 1, 2, 3, Roman Reigns and Seth Rollins, your new NXT World Tag Team Champions. Now, Dean Ambrose with the NXT Championship. That was something I knew that I wanted to do. But as I said before, I didn't know where I wanted to do it. And afterwards, when we finished TakeOver Orlando and we did the segment with the Shield attacking Aleister Black. Now, that, I'd have to say, is really when I knew that I wanted to go ahead and put the championship on Dean Ambrose, and that Ambrose would be the one to end Aleister Black's undefeated streak. Because I couldn't do it with Reigns or Rollins because they had just won the tag team titles. So that took them out of the equation. So that only left Dean Ambrose. And, what better place to do it than in the Barclays Center at the first TakeOver Brooklyn. And I sat, and Ambrose was not the first choice. I don't even remember who the first choice was, to be 100% honest. But Dean Ambrose, I knew for a fact that I wanted to have him, especially after the angle that closed out TakeOver Orlando. I knew for a fact that TakeOver Brooklyn was the time to put the championship on Dean Ambrose. It was the prime time. It was the perfect time. The first TakeOver Brooklyn. And that match, and not even just their match at TakeOver Brooklyn, that match at Money in the Bank, those two matches are two of my favorite matches that I've ever done. And at the moment, I have 3 favorite matches. As I said, those 2 that they did at TakeOver Brooklyn and Money in the Bank, and the Kevin Owens versus Ricochet match from TakeOver New York. Those are my top 3 favorite matches that I've had the pleasure of doing. Those were so much fun to do, and I hope to do so many more matches like that in the near future. Now, I knew exactly how I wanted Dean Ambrose to win the championship. I knew for a fact that Aleister Black was going to be screwed out of the NXT championship. Now, if you go back and you watch the footage, Aleister Black hit the Black Mass, but he hit it on the outside, and any pro wrestling fan can tell you can't win the matchup on the outside. So, although Aleister Black, yes, he hit the Black Mass, he did not hit it in the ring, where it mattered the most. So, he hit it on the outside. Then he'd had to get Dean Ambrose back into the ring. So that's when I knew, okay, I'm going to have Roman Reigns and Seth Rollins come out and do something. And I didn't know what I wanted them to do. But I knew I had to have Roman Reigns distract the referee, because Dean Ambrose just got his head taken off with the Black Mass. So he's not going to be a factor for this segment. So I knew Roman Reigns was going to distract the referee. I knew that was going to happen. And I sat and I thought, okay, what can I have Seth Rollins do? So while Roman Reigns was distracting the referee, Dean Ambrose trying to get his wits about him in the ring, because he just got knocked out with the Black Mass. He's trying to get back up. Then I would have Seth Rollins come in from the crowd with the referee's back turned. It's like, okay, what's Seth going to do? And I didn't want to have him do the curb stomp, so I sat and I thought, Seth has a diverse moveset. So like, okay, hit the sling blade, and then what can I have him hit after the sling blade? And I was like, okay, instead of hitting the curb stomp, I'll have him hit the Seth Walker, which it's a brutal move in and of itself, and it looks cool as hell. You gotta admit. But on the outside, factor in Seth Rollins hitting in a sling blade. Follow that up with a Seth Walker, tosses Black back into the ring. Dean Ambrose hits one Dirty Deeds, hits two Dirty Deeds, and then picks Aleister Black back up to his feet, fires the shot, the final shot, on Aleister Black's championship reign, hits one more Dirty Deeds. 1, 2, 3. It's over. Aleister Black's undefeated streak, his almost year-long undefeated streak, comes to an end. Now, you can hear it in my voice when I say it. You know, as I said before, I get caught up in the moment. Even I got a little bit heated from that. You know, and it happens. You know, it adds more to the program. It adds more to the production. It adds to the production value, is what I'm trying to say. So, you know, I believe I said something along the lines of they should make 2 more NXT championships and give one to Roman Reigns and Seth Rollins, because without them, Dean Ambrose wouldn't have won the NXT championship. I said something along those lines. I'm not too sure what I said, but it was something like that. So that really was the thought going into how I was going to put the belt on Dean Ambrose. And, you know, it may or may not be a popular decision with some people, but, you know, even now, the Shield runs NXT because they have the NXT title, they have the tag team titles, and who knows? They could at some point in time win the North American Championship. Will that happen? Maybe. Not 100% sure yet. Just gonna have to stay tuned and see for yourself. Now, the decision to have the Money in the Bank pay-per-view was a very tricky one, because up until that point, the ladder match at TakeOver Brooklyn was the only ladder match I had ever played on 2K19. And I've said this before, you know, I don't play 2K ever. Like, ever. The only time I play 2K is when I'm recording NXT. If I'm not recording NXT or doing something related to NXT, you know, creating attires or downloading arenas or doing something, if I'm not doing that, I'm not playing 2K ever. It's just, 2K is not fun to me. And the only reason why I buy the game is for, you know, the Universe Mode series. If I wasn't doing NXT, then I wouldn't be buying the game. That's just a plain hard fact. Because, a little fun fact, prior to starting NXT on 2K18, I actually didn't have 2K18. And I didn't have 2K18 up until, like, I'd say a month before I started NXT. Because I only had 2K17 at that point in time. And it's because there was just no reason for me to buy it. It was the same game, and it's essentially the same game every year. And it's not even 2K's fault. You know, you can't fault them for that. You know, WWE as a whole doesn't change much over the course of a year. And because WWE doesn't really change much over the course of a year, you can't expect the game to change that much over the course of a year. Not to mention a yearly wrestling game. You know, how much do you really expect to change? You know, you can't put together a whole complete wrestling game in 1 year. This is not possible. So up until a month before recording NXT, I didn't have 2K18. And when I knew that I wanted to keep the series going with Season 2, I was like, oh, damn it. I gotta get 2K19. Which, you know, as I said before, if I wasn't doing NXT, I never would have bought 2K19. I wouldn't be buying 2K20 because the game just doesn't interest me. You know, I'd much rather play something like Fire Pro. That game that's fun to me. 2K is not fun. It's just not. But I'm getting off topic again. I'm so sorry. It happens, man. The decision to introduce the Money in the Bank was definitely something because, as I said, up until that point, the only ladder match that I had ever played on 2K19 was the one that I did at TakeOver Brooklyn. And when I say that, I mean that 100%. Like, the first time that I played the ladder match, like the first time that I sat and started recording the Baszler versus Lynch match, the tutorials and everything had popped up. I was like, oh, brother, I've never played a ladder match on this game. Like, oof. I've had this game for, like, what, 4 or 5 months? And I've never played a ladder match? And even now, you know, it's September, almost October. There are still matches on 2K19 that I've never played before. Like, I've never opened the 2K Towers menu, ever. I couldn't even tell you what it looks like. I've never opened the My Career or My Player or whatever the hell it's called. I've never opened the 2K Showcase menu. I could not tell you what those menus look like because I've never bothered to open them. There's no point. Like, yeah, I could play the Daniel Bryan Showcase, but I'm good. I'm good. So, you know, any content creator can tell you, multi-man matches suck. They suck. There's just no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Plain and simple. They fucking suck. Like, especially if you play with 2 controllers, like I play with 2 controllers. So, that was my first time playing a multi-person ladder match. So I was like, how the hell am I going to do this? And ultimately, I was like, you know what? Instead of trying to tackle this with 6 people in the ring at the same time, because there was no way in hell I was going to do an 8-person ladder match. That was not going to happen. There was just no way that was going to happen. It would have been just far too chaotic. And as I said before, I'm still new to this. I'm still green around the years. You know, it's going to take a while before, you know, I really hone my craft, because there are still a lot of aspects with NXT that need improvement. And multi-man matches are definitely up there. So 6 was enough. There was no way I was going to do a fucking 8-man ladder match. That was never even a thought in my mind, because it was just been way too chaotic, way too much trying to control, and it was just a hassle. So instead of trying to tackle it all, you know, with 6 people in the ring at the same time, what I decided to do was focus on 2 people at a time. And that made the match a lot easier to control, but at the same time, god damn, I had to record so many matches for that. It was ridiculous. Like, ooh. That was absolutely ridiculous, man. I don't know. And because there was so much happening, because of how many matches I had to sit through and record, some footage didn't even get used. You know, it was weird. It was like, oh man, I want to incorporate this footage because, you know, I recorded it. You know, I took the time and I took the effort to record it. So of course I want it in the video. But, you know, for me to get the match how I wanted it, because I knew how I wanted the match to end, but I had to incorporate other stuff into it. Like the beginning, the middle, all that other stuff. So when I sat and I was like, how am I gonna do this? I recorded the ending first. I edited the ending. I did all that, put all that together because I knew exactly how I wanted it to end. So I did that first. And everything else in between, I was just like, okay, we're just going to wing the fuck out of this, because it was my first time playing a multi-man ladder match. And I was like, I don't know how I want to do this. Like, it was chaotic, dude. And because of how much was going on in that match, that actually halted, me uploading the pay-per-view by a while, because the rest of the show was done. The only thing that was holding the show up was the ladder match. I was just like, oh my gosh, this is rough, dude. This is rough. And even looking back on it, like, yeah, it was pretty good, but it went kind of fast. And I didn't even mean to do that. Like, and when I say it went kind of fast, I mean like it was almost like a glorified spot fest. Because there was so much happening in that match. It was crazy. And when I sit and I think now, that is probably going to be the only Money in the Bank ladder match that we do, because I only did the pay-per-view itself solely so we could introduce the Money in the Bank briefcase. Because, it would have been kind of weird just to have somebody like, hey, here's a briefcase. You could cash in on the champion whenever you want to. Have at it. That would have been weird. So I wanted to introduce it, and I knew I wanted to do the pay-per-view, so I was like, okay, we'll do the pay-per-view, we'll do the Money in the Bank. So now we have the Money in the Bank briefcase. That's it. We're done. Because as I mentioned, I don't really like doing gimmick matches. Or actually, let me rephrase that. I do gimmick matches, but I don't do them quite that often, and I don't really like gimmick pay-per-views. That's more what I meant to say. Like the Money in the Bank, like, it was a good pay-per-view. Don't get me wrong, but gimmick pay-per-views, pay-per-views that are based solely on a specific type of match, that's not really my forte. Now I do have an idea in the near future. I don't know when I'm gonna actually do it, but I do have an idea. So you're definitely gonna want to stay tuned for that. But other than that, yeah, that's probably gonna be the only Money in the Bank ladder match that I do. Simply because, goodness gracious, like, yeah, I know I could improve upon, excuse me, my editing and things like that, and because trust me, my editing needs some work. But there's no really need to constantly do it. I don't. That's not going to be an annual thing. I can tell you that for a fact. Like next year, there's not going to be another Money in the Bank pay-per-view or a Money in the Bank ladder match at a TakeOver event. We're not doing that. That's not happening. And yeah, I know I could do a women's Money in the Bank, but we're not doing that. There's no need for that. We have the one Money in the Bank that I needed and that I wanted to do. That's all. So that's probably going to be, I'm actually like 99% sure that is the only Money in the Bank ladder match and the only Money in the Bank pay-per-view we will ever do. Because again, gimmick pay-per-views, and that's not really my forte. But I'll go more into detail about why I don't really do gimmick pay-per-views in a separate video. Going into TakeOver Phoenix, I had no idea who I wanted Dean Ambrose to face for the NXT Championship. I sat and I thought for the longest time, who do I want Dean Ambrose to face for the title? And I did have somebody in mind, but ultimately I chose to hold back on this individual because I have something else in mind for them. But Pac was someone that I had chosen literally like the day before that I started recording that matchup. And I was sitting and I was thinking, and I was like, who could I possibly have Ambrose face for the championship? Because I knew that they weren't going to defeat Ambrose for the title. I knew that wasn't going to happen just yet. So I was sitting and I was thinking, and I was like, what if I did Pac? And even Pac, he wasn't a surefire decision. I had somebody else. Yes, I had somebody else in mind, but I had somebody. I said, nah, I'll hold off on them. And then Pac came to mind. I was like, okay, I could possibly see that. And then I also had somebody else in mind, and I was like, nah, I'll wait on them too. So ultimately, I sat and settled with Pac, and the match with Ambrose and Pac, it could have went better. It went a little bit short. For my liking, it didn't go very long at all. I don't even remember how long the match was. I think it was about 10 minutes long. It couldn't have been more than 15 minutes. Which is very short for a World Championship match. I wasn't exactly too happy with that match, to be completely honest. I sat and I was like, it took me a while to get a feel for it because, as I mentioned before, I had just settled on Pac the day before, and I didn't have a Pac created wrestler downloaded, so I had to download one, and I didn't even learn the moveset. Like, the first time that I played that match was the first time that I used that character. So yeah, I wasn't really too happy with how that match turned out. It definitely could have went a lot better, but I knew that I just had to get through the match, because after the match was the key thing that I wanted to do, and that was have Aleister Black return, because we hadn't seen Aleister Black up to that point until it was about Money in the Bank was the last time that we saw Aleister Black. So those 4 weeks that we didn't see Aleister Black, I knew I wanted to have him return at TakeOver Phoenix, because he technically won the match at the Money in the Bank pay-per-view, because Dean Ambrose got himself disqualified, using the low blow. So I knew for a fact that I wanted to have Aleister Black versus Dean Ambrose at TakeOver New York. So I had to get through the match with Ambrose and Pac, and then once we got through that, and it's actually funny enough, because if I don't know if you guys know, I tend to use exhibition mode and universe mode, both. And when I recorded that match, it was in universe mode. So when I finished the match, I got this cutscene, Dean Ambrose attacking Pac after the match and throwing him into the steel steps. So I was like, that actually, I can work upon that. Ambrose attacks Pac, and then Aleister Black returns. He attacks Dean Ambrose, knocks him out. So that sets up for their match at TakeOver New York. And then, after their match at TakeOver New York, Pac returned and got his measure of revenge on Dean Ambrose for that attack at TakeOver Phoenix. The Kevin Owens versus Ricochet rivalry is one of the top rivalries that we have done here in NXT so far. And it's actually something that I've really wanted to talk about for quite some time. Now, the rivalry all started back in the first season, during the Gold Rush tournament to crown the first NXT champion. It was a tournament match, Kevin Owens versus Ricochet, first round matchup. Ricochet won that match, defeating Kevin Owens, and Kevin Owens attacked Ricochet after the match, and I believe he delivered 3 package pile drivers to Ricochet, took him out of the tournament for quite some time. Kevin Owens then replaced Ricochet in the tournament match, facing AJ Styles. Ricochet's music would distract Kevin Owens and cost him that matchup in the tournament. So from there, Ricochet would return at NXT Arrival and face Kevin Owens in a grudge match. And that match was actually one of the better matches I did in season 1. Of course, you know, it had its issues, but again, those were the earlier videos. So of course, you know, you'll always have your issues in your earlier videos. Ricochet would go on to win that match, and then the two would face each other again at TakeOver, which was the second pay-per-view, and Kevin Owens would then win that match. Now, Kevin Owens, he went away for a while. You know, that was the last time we had saw Kevin Owens for quite some time. And Ricochet too, he went away for a while. You know, he was there for a little bit. He was there for a little bit longer than Kevin Owens was, but for the most part, you know, they took some time off, I guess you could say, after that matchup at TakeOver. Now, Ricochet would face then NXT North American Champion Eric Young in the opening match on the final television episode of the first season. And Eric Young defeated Ricochet, but then he would attack Ricochet after the match. And that would lead to Kevin Owens returning. And to many surprise, Kevin Owens assisted Ricochet in attacking Eric Young, and that's where the Eric Young and Kevin Owens feud all began. And that's also where Kevin Owens would turn face. Kevin Owens assisting Ricochet, and I believe it was a nice way to go out for the first season. Now, fast forward to the end of the second season, Ricochet is now the North American champion, and he's facing Kevin Owens at the final pay-per-view of the second season, which, if you cast your mind back, Kevin Owens faced Eric Young in the final pay-per-view of the first season for the North American Championship and won the North American Championship, and thus started his reign as the longest reigning champion in NXT. So I think it was a nice little callback that Ricochet was in the opening contest and Kevin Owens came to his aid in the first season, and then you fast forward to the second season. Ricochet is the North American champion. He's facing Kevin Owens for the North American Championship at TakeOver. And I thought it was a nice little callback. You know, they were facing each other. You know, they were allies, they were rivals. You know, I thought it was a nice little callback, a nice little way to have those two, because, you know, they've fought each other, they've tried to kill each other, they tried to maim each other. Then they became allies for a short stint, long enough to fend off Eric Young, and then fast forwarding to the end of the second season, they were right back to facing each other again. And going to their match at TakeOver New York, I had so much fun with that match. Recording that match, I knew that there were 3 spots that I wanted to do in that match, and they came out actually really nice, I believe. You know, I could have improved them just a little bit, but ultimately I think they came out really, really nice. Those spots, of course, being the pop-up powerbomb countered into the Hurricane Rana, the Hurricane Rana or the Dragon Rana countered into the powerbomb, and the F-Sing, or F-Sing, however you want to say it, countered into the Tornado DDT. Those three spots I knew for a fact that I wanted to do, and they were tricky as hell to pull off. But my personal favorite spot had to be the F-Sing countered into the DDT. That the transition into that, it was just so smooth, and I loved how it came out. It was so perfect, and I don't think I could have done it any better than that. That definitely had to have been my top favorite match that I did in the second season. The Kevin Owens versus Ricochet rivalry in general is just something about it. The fact that it stems all the way back to the beginning of NXT, and as I've said before, in a podcast with Third Strike, if you don't include their match in the Gold Rush tournament, they've only had 3 encounters. The first one being at NXT Arrival, the second one being at NXT TakeOver, and their third encounter being at the last pay-per-view, TakeOver New York. So if you count that time frame from NXT TakeOver all the way to NXT TakeOver in New York, that's a big jump. That's September of 2018 all the way to August of this year. So that's almost a year, damn near a year in the making, that championship match. And when I sat and I recorded that match, I nailed that match, and I'd say about 2 takes. 2 takes worth of commentary, I had that match down. I don't know what it was, but that match, it just flowed together so well. Like, I just felt it, I got caught up in it. It was almost like I was watching the match in real life, and I was just calling it in my head. And you can tell by the time we get to the end of the match. And I also knew how I wanted to end the match. I knew that I wanted to have Ricochet do the Oz cutter and then go into the 630. Because at that point in time, I had been watching a whole lot of New Japan, and Will Ospreay was putting on banger matches. And I knew that Will and Ricochet are good friends in real life. Their movesets are very, very similar. So I knew I wanted to have Ricochet do the Oz cutter, have it be an homage to Will, do the Oz cutter, and then go into the 630. That was how I wanted to end that match. And the way that it just went, it was just so perfect. Everything about that match, I don't think that I could have pulled that match off better than what I did. And even the little things, like trying to have Eric Young come out and interfere in the match and being stopped by Sami Zayn. Small things like that. I don't think that match could have went any better than what it was, which is why Kevin Owens versus Ricochet at NXT TakeOver New York has to be not only my top favorite match that I've done in the second season. If I were to do a Slammy Awards, that would be my match of the year. So to close this out and to look back on season 2, we had our downs, but for every down that we had so many more ups. And it's crazy to think that when I sit and I look back at the pay-per-views that we did, the lowest viewed pay-per-view was the first one. And even that still had like 150 some odd views, I believe. That was the lowest viewed. And the more pay-per-views that we did, the more views that we got. TakeOver Orlando had like 300 views. TakeOver Brooklyn had like 960. TakeOver Money in the Bank, 320, I believe. TakeOver Phoenix, 330 something, I believe. TakeOver New York, like 500 views. So as time moved on, the more pay-per-views we did, the more the views increased on those pay-per-views, and that's absolutely nuts to think about. And of course, I have my issues with the capture card, but they were far less precedent in the second season than they were in the first season. And looking back, when we did the final pay-per-view on the first season, the capture card problem was very precedent in that match. And now you fast forward to the end of the second season, and we only had maybe one hiccup, and that's crazy to think about. And TakeOver New York was the longest pay-per-view that we've done. And as I said, of course we've had our downs. No matter what you do on YouTube, you'll always have your downs. But we had so many more ups that they just outweigh the downs completely. Yeah, I took some time, a little bit more time on some pay-per-views here and there, trying to get them all together. But ultimately, when we did get them together, and to see your all's reactions to them, to see that you all actually loved these pay-per-views, that you all actually enjoyed watching these, from seeing comments telling me that I'm underrated, or telling me that I should have more subs based on the pay-per-view that they had just watched. It's heartwarming. It's hard to put into words, and I know I've said that before, but I've always had the mindset, like, don't slouch on the TV episodes, because those are the building blocks. Like, yeah, you have a little bit more leniency on the TV episodes, but when you do the pay-per-views, you better bring your A game on those pay-per-views, because those will be the marquee matches, the money-making shows that most people are going to watch. And because of that, I've gathered a ton of views, and overall just so much more improvement in the second season than what we did and what we had in the first season. And because of that, I wholeheartedly believe that the second season was so much better than the first season. Like, yes, the first season was the building blocks, it was the foundation for NXT, but the second season, we took what we had already built upon in the first season and improved upon that, and we did it to a degree that we broke 100 subscribers. We're on our way to 200 now. We broke 10,000 views. We're currently sitting at almost 14,000, and it's absolutely crazy to think about. And NXT is something so much more than just a universe mode. Yeah, I pour a lot of free time, a lot of heart, and a lot of effort into this series. And yeah, some episodes may only get like 100 some odd views here and there. Some don't even get that. And I know that majority of you are subbed to the channel for NXT. And I've said that before, that's perfectly fine, but I don't want this channel to be solely centered around universe mode, because I have other wrestling things that I want to do. Even if you don't want to watch the non-wrestling things, that's fine. I thought about starting a second channel, non-wrestling related channel. It's just a thought, that I've been toying with the idea with for some time now. But I don't want this channel to be solely focused on universe mode, and which, when I do things like Fire Pro, the Battle of the Elite tournament on Fire Pro, I want you guys to watch and enjoy that too, because yes, NXT, it's fine, you can watch that perfectly fine. But I believe that the commentary that I do, easy for me to say, that the commentary that I've done for the Battle of the Elite tournament on Fire Pro is so much more better than what I've done on NXT, because it's me being me. It's not linear. It's not, how do I want to say, it's not, I don't have to be as strict or have to be uptight with it as I do with NXT. Because, if I mess up on NXT, then, I have to stop recording, and then I have to go back, then I have to cut that part out, then I have to re-record, go from there. Fire Pro, I can just let the video play and just go, just talk. And of course, that's going to need some improving upon. First time commentating on Fire Pro while watching it live, or just commentating on a video while watching it live in general. So of course, I'm going to have to improve upon that, and we'll do that in the near future. But, I don't want you guys to solely be here for Universe Mode. Because, yes, that's what some of you guys are solely here for. But all I'm saying, and I'm trying to get the point across, all I'm trying to say is, broaden your horizons, so to speak. Don't just watch NXT. Watch pro wrestling. Whatever it is, whether it's 2K, whether it's Fire Pro, or whether it's whatever other wrestling video game I decide to play on the damn channel. Just watch and enjoy. Don't just watch for the sake of NXT, or just for the game itself. Just watch and enjoy that it's wrestling. And that's what I want a lot of you to do. Now obviously, you're your own person. Only you can tell you what the hell you can watch. You know what I mean? So all I'm saying is, give it a shot. I enjoy it. I enjoy it far more than 2K. And I think that if you guys watched Fire Pro or watched any other wrestling game that I do, you'll see that I enjoy it so much, which is why, I'll take recommendations to play games, and if you guys want to see a game, yeah, sure, recommend it, but I also have to want to play, I want to enjoy it too. So just watch it, give it a try, hang out with the boys, enjoy the wrestling, just have fun. But overall, as a reflection on season 2 of NXT, it definitely improved a lot on everything from the first season. And the fact that it improved on everything from the first season, and the fact that I feel that it improved on everything from the first season, that I'd have to say was, it's mission accomplished, because, you always want to improve upon previous things, The sequel always has to improve upon what made the original so good. And I do believe that we improved a lot on that. And to see that you guys enjoyed it, it's, even though it was a pain, I definitely feel that it was well worth it, which is why, NXT season 3, it's gonna be something else. It's gonna be something different. Yeah, NXT as a whole is something different, but I've been rambling on for quite a while now, and you're probably tired of listening to my voice, so I'm gonna go ahead and end the video here. So in conclusion, NXT season 2, overall, I'd say it was a damn good season, and I'm looking forward to the third season, see what we can do with that. And also, give the Fire Pro content a try, you know. Hey, don't worry about the fact that it's AEW. I know some people probably didn't watch it because I saw AEW in the title. No, I am not trying to do NXT versus AEW nonsense. No, it has nothing to do with that. Yeah, I've wanted to do that tournament for a long time. I wanted to do it way back, even before Double or Nothing. So, give the Fire Pro stuff a try. You may like it. Even if you don't, let me know why you didn't like it. And do not say because it was AEW. But I've been rambling on for quite some time. You know, it's time for me to go. NXT Season 2 overall, it was a hell of a success. And I cannot wait to get into Season 3. It's going to be a hell of a lot of fun. But I want to thank you guys so much for coming around today. If you guys did enjoy this reflection on Season 2 of NXT, make sure you hit that like button. Or if you disliked it, well, hit the dislike button. Let me know what you guys didn't like about it. Maybe I can improve upon it. If you want to join our community, make sure you hit that subscribe button. We're making new wrestling content all the time here on the channel. Make sure you join the Angelic Cyber Squad. We are making new plays, ladies and gentlemen. We have so much more wrestling, baby. That's all we do around here. You want to be here, we want you here. Let's make it happen. So, with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, I have been Angelus. You have been awesome. Thank you so much for watching. And we will see you all in NXT Season 3. I'm out. Peace.